Saints Talk. What's the future hold for young players, ladies and gentlemen? Today, the backdrop, unbelievable. When I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I was so excited to react to this. Nicholas pulling a NASCAR. I mean, in the vehicle. And now, listen, I know I made a video in my vehicle, all right, a couple days ago. I understand that, but I wasn't driving. I was in a parking lot. I was parked. The car wasn't even on. Nick is driving in this video. He's left turn signal. He is looking both ways. He is stopping, not California stop, not California roll, whatever it's called, full on stop at stop signs, letting little old ladies cross across the street. He's doing it all right? And let me tell you this, in New Orleans, assuming this is where he's driving, that has got to be the most dangerous place on earth to drive. Nothing but one ways, pedestrians everywhere, nobody following the rules of the road. If the red light's too long, you might get carjacked. A lot happening. And Nick said, you know what? I don't care. I'm doing this video. He must be in a damn, Chevy Tahoe XL. Look at the room back there. I was in my 2013 Honda Accord. Unbelievable stuff. So let's go ahead and get to the video. I cannot wait. I don't even know if I'll be able to focus on the Saints talk because I'm going to be so focused on the driving.
Hey, what's up, guys? Taking off from the Saints. Just finished up practice for the day. Today's access is over. And, a couple things, just a couple little takeaways from the day. The first one is that the Saints got Cesar Ruiz back out of practice. I think that's kind of a big deal.
Hell yeah, it is. Hell yeah. It is a huge deal that the offensive line is healthy. Now, you could say, a little too late, whatever, it is what it is. But the fact that Lucas Patrick, Cesar Ruiz, Eric McCoy, the fact that we have the healthiest offensive line we have had since week one, day one. We've got a fully developed, or not fully developed, but more developed than he was to start the season. Talise Fuaga, we got a Trevor Penning who's playing with confidence, and now we have the interior offensive line healthy. So yes, it is a huge, huge bonus for the New Orleans Saints.
For this team, if they're going to have any hope of winning this game, they're going to have to be able to block up front. And they got Ruiz back. They got Lucas Patrick back. They got Cesar Ruiz back.
Yes.
And if you're going to find a way to offset not having Taysom Hill, who is kind of one of the huge key components of this offense, you got to be able to block. And if this team has any chance of winning this week, it's going to have to be on the ground, running the ball, and being able to do everything you can possibly do with Alvin Kamara. And hopefully Kendre Miller is good to go 100%.
Yeah, from what I heard, there's no limitations on Kendre Miller. I guess he kind of always has limitations as long as his hamstrings are his hamstrings. But as far as like game plan, I don't think there's any limitations in the game plan.
Should be. And they're going to need both those guys. And having both those guys at their best, I think, kind of starts with the blocking up front. So that's a major key component, I think, for them this week. And that's going to be really helpful having those guys back out there. A couple other little things. Someone asked me yesterday just kind of what the latest is on Chris Olave. I don't think there's really anything new there. Rizzi mentioned that the appointment got moved back a week with the specialist. I would still say that I would be really, really surprised given...
No way in hell Chris Olave comes back this season. I would say 60-40, 65-35 that he plays again. Just from the unreliable sources that I've heard, and they are as unreliable gets, it sounds like talk is lukewarm of retirement. But again, that's unreliable sources.
Where the team's at and everything, I just don't really see necessarily a reality where he's going to be back out on the field this season. I think it's more unlikely than likely.
Yeah.
Things could obviously change. You could get some really good news. Team could go out and win a bunch of games, and then you're trying to find reasons to get on the field instead of kind of looking at it a different way. Just my guess at it. I haven't been told anything. I haven't heard anything, but I would be really surprised if he ends up coming back this season and playing. I think it's probably smarter and better to be more cautious with it. Wait until next year. Take the whole offseason. Get totally healthy. Make sure you're coming back, and you're coming back to something that's a little bit better than...
Yeah, let me make this clear. I hope he comes back. I think it's more likely he comes back than not, but I do think in today's day and age, there is more conversation than there used to be. There is more conversation with players and their family and their agents and whoever of like, look, a lot of these players do not have to do this. A lot of players back then, when concussions, you hear like Troy Aikman said he had like 30-something concussions or something. So back then it was just like you play when you can play. But we've seen players like Calvin Johnson and players who end up retiring early, and they kind of cite like, look, I have my health. I can play with my kids. I can do everything I want to do. I don't want to be one of these old players that you see who, after they're done playing, they can't walk, their legs don't work, their hands are all mangled, or in the case of concussions, like, they may start to lose like, some functionality or whatever. So I don't blame any player. I don't care how young, I don't care how old, I don't care how accomplished, I don't care whatever. I don't blame any player for taking a legitimate look at this and taking time and taking 400 steps back and saying, one, can I do this? Two, do I want to do this? And a lot of players say, like, once you start to doubt playing, that's usually the time to step away. And I think it's one of those situations where sometimes that doubt is forced by an injury or whatnot. So, I mean, Andrew Luck, retired early. So, again, I think he'll be back. If I was a betting man, I would say Olave will be back, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if conversations were being had that were beyond, like, how fast can I get on the field.
Then what the situation is right now, to Rizzi's credit, though, he did say that, he's not really looking at it and pressing them. And that's kind of what you want to see in that situation. The last thing you want is for, like, you feel like you're rushing it and you're risking something, and he comes back, he gets hurt again, and then there's like a long-term thing. I think obviously Chris's longevity is much more important than the situation that they're in right now with how things are kind of looking. So we'll see how that one plays out. But yeah, I would be kind of surprised to see him get back out there. But I think it's going to be a huge test for.
Sirens are downtown New Orleans. Those sirens are not behind Nicholas. We are not in a cops situation. We're not in a high-speed chase situation. I know if you're watching, you're like, hold on, there's sirens. Why isn't Nick pulling over? Are we watching a high-speed chase in progress? No, that was downtown New Orleans. That was I'm not sure what the hell is going on out there, but
for the team over the next couple of weeks and just kind of seeing what they're able to do without Taysom. I mean, I don't think that they're ever gonna try not to win or whatever. They're obviously all in. Rizzi's all in. The players are all in on Rizzi or whatever. But if you are a Tankathon watcher, I think that the stuff that's going to help the draft pick, that's kind of what's playing out right now. Chris being out and being cautious with it instead of rushing him back. I mean, that's something that isn't.
Oh my God, we're about to roll. We're about to flip. Look at this angle. Damn, Nick, straighten it out, brother. Nick, get the wheel. Oh my God, are we about to roll? Ladies and gentlemen, hold on to something.
Help you win games, so that's not a terrible thing. If you're looking for the draft pick at this point.
Oh shit. Okay, we're back.
And Taysom getting hurt is absolutely horrible, and you don't want a bright side.
Crazy taxi is very different than public taxi. Okay, just gonna throw that out.
Anything like that, but you're down another key player on offense, and it's going to be a lot harder to move the ball. So I think it's going to be hard for them to win these games going down the stretch. I still think the Giants is definitely a very winnable contest, but hey, man, like you never know what's going to happen in a situation like that. You're going up to New York this weekend. Right now, they're saying it's 48 degrees on Sunday, which isn't terrible.
Are we getting on the interstate?
That's actually kind of warm, and like the air does feel a little bit different up there. I know people.
Man, look.
People always say that. Look, I've lived both places. 48 here feels colder than 48 there. There's moisture in there and all that stuff. The humidity, it hits different. It absolutely hits different, and it isn't just being used to it. Like there is a difference in the temperature and how it kind of feels to your body. I don't care what science says. I'm telling you, man, like anecdotally, like I fully believe that to be true. But look, 48 isn't a bad day, especially in December in the north. But if that forecast changes a little bit, and now all of a sudden you're going up to like a really cold situation.
Yeah, I mean, 48 ain't nothing. We saw Tulane, my Green Wave, get absolutely embarrassed at Army. And they said that temp was like 15. Like it felt like, I mean, when you're in those temperatures, like, yeah, if you've never been in that before, that absolutely is a shock to the system. I was born and bred, on the Gulf Coast. Anything under 50, I am absolutely shaking my core. But 48 in an NFL game with the technology they have now, a lot of these fields are heated. The stuff that the players have on them, the stuff that's on the sidelines, I mean, all of that. 48 is not that big of a deal. I would say anything above freezing is pretty chill. Now, yes, humidity, rain, wind, all that does factor in. But unless the forecast dramatically shifts, like it's colder right now than 48 in New Orleans. I mean, it's like, I think it was like 30-something degrees this week in New Orleans. So,
And, that could turn the tides a little bit. I don't really know what to expect from Drew Lock running this offense.
I know what to expect from Drew Lock. He's complete shit. I know exactly what to expect from Drew Lock. F- play. Horrific decision-making, inability to make throws, just terrible all around.
A huge thing this week, obviously, is going to be shutting down Neighbors, and I think that's going to be a huge task for Kool-Aid and Alante. I didn't necessarily love the way either one of those guys played last week. I thought they
but Neighbors is probably at best 70%. So
limited the damage a little bit, but there were mistakes from both of them. Kool-Aid let a big play go. Alante let a curl turn into like a 19-yard gain, like a little 6-yard pass. Ends up going for like 19 yards because of the way it kind of got played. So I could see
we are picking up speed again.
I could see Neighbors kind of having a big day. Like,
my God, we might be going 100 miles an hour.
I think the biggest task for Joe Woods in this defense down the stretch, I don't know what there really is left to prove.
I'll tell you what I would do if I was Joe Woods. I would just do the good old-fashioned too-high shell, say, if Drew Lock wants to dink and dunk me down the field, good luck. I'm not letting Malik Neighbors beat me deep. I'm just going to sit back, keep everything underneath, and we'll go from there.
Or whatever, but if you're going to prove that things can get better and there's improvement and everything, I think it's really important for them to find a way to figure out how to stop allowing explosive plays, and that's been the biggest issue with the team this whole entire season. Every single week it seems like there's one of them, and look, I think you see them kind of everywhere around the league. Like everybody's kind of running the ball right now, and they're setting up these shots down the field, and that's just kind of the way the game's played. But if you're going to be a good team and you're going to be a top-tier team, you have to stop that stuff. And to this point, the Saints haven't been able to do it. And if Kool-Aid and Alante don't want them to go into this draft looking for another cornerback, or if they want to say, hey, you don't need to bring back Paulson and Debo, you got to stop those plays. And I think this week is a huge part of that. You got to figure out how to make sure that
you got to, I've said this before, but like a defense needs to be good at something in today's NFL. You either have to be really good against the run, you have to be really good against the pass, you have to be good at, you have to be able to get after the quarterback. Like, obviously the good defenses do all of it, but in order to exist and be a upper tier team or a contender or whatever, you got to do something. And right now the defense does nothing. Like right now the defense is not good against the run. It's 32nd against the run. Right now we don't pressure the quarterback, and right now we give up explosive plays in the passing game. So yeah, the defense is not good. The defense is well below average. We're 26th in DVOA. So, we're bottom of the barrel, and it kind of goes to what we talked about last week where you look around and it's like, well, yeah, the defense is just kind of mid. Like the players are kind of mid. A lot of the players are older. Some of the players are unproven. Some of the players are highly volatile, but none of the players are consistently above average. So why would the defense be above average? And a lot of the players are consistently below average. Thus, it's like, well, yeah, okay. If most of the defense is consistently below average, it makes sense that the defense is below average.
Neighbors isn't going off and making a ton of big plays. So it's going to be kind of a really important part of this game, I think, is just showing that you can do that and this guy isn't going to kill you. And then you got to turn around and do it again against the Commanders. And then you got to turn around and do it again against the Packers. And I think the factor fiction aspect of like what this secondary is going to be, what these cornerbacks are going to be, I think a really big part of that is going to be showing that you can stop these explosive plays. And if
you got to limit. Like, even if you're not going to stop, offenses, if you're not going to be a shutdown defense or whatever, you still have to be able to limit teams. You can't let Cleveland throw for 400 yards. You can't let the Giants, for example, you can't let Drew Lock throw for 280, 300 yards. You can't let Tyrone Tracy run for 100 yards. Like, you have to, even if you're not pitching a shutout, even if you're not the greatest defense of all time, whatever, you can't let these bad players and bad teams do what they want. And that's just what the Saints have done, because then when you face teams like the Commanders or the Packers, like, what shot do you have to stop them? If you can't stop Drew Lock, like, what the hell are you going to do against Jordan Love? What are you going to do against Jane Daniels?
Those two can, like, show they can play and that they can be this, and it isn't a huge issue, and that they can be your corners. I feel a lot better about the future of this team. But right now, if I'm just being totally honest, like, I feel uncertain about the cornerbacks in general.
I feel uncertain about the entire defense.
I don't feel great about kind of what we've seen since Marshawn and Adebo have gone out. I think Alante was playing really, really good in the slot. And I still, like, when he's crashing down and making plays, I mean, it is great. Like,
he's just such a volatile player. I mean, he is just the kind of guy where he plays so aggressive and he plays so physical that when it is working, it looks awesome and it feels awesome, because that's what you want. When it's not working is when you see these busted plays. And then it's one of those, like, it's kind of just how it is. But to what we've been saying about Alante, like, that is why he's so good in the slot and why he's not that great as your primary outside cornerback, because if he's being targeted that much, like, eventually you're going to get to him, and it's just the style of play. So I love Alante. I think he's awesome, but I think he's in a situation where it's not, if he faces up against a great wide receiver, and if Malik Neighbors was 100% healthy, like, if him and Neighbors were going head to head all game, Neighbors is going to get him a few times just because of the nature of how Alante plays.
I think that aspect of his game, I don't know. Like, I've always liked him on the outside, and I still think he can be a really good outside corner. I think if you let him settle into it, and especially if you gave him, like, an offseason to go away and come back, and that's what he focuses on, like, sort of the same way that he kind of focused on playing the slot this year, I think that you would see, like, something a little bit better maybe. And it might take a couple of weeks for him to settle into it, so I'm not closing the book on him.
But I think if you asked, like, let's pretend week 1 of 2025 was next week, I would say I'm okay going into the season with Alante and Kool-Aid. Is it the best cornerback duo? No, but I don't think it's a complete dumpster fire to where you need to focus on a cornerback in the first round. I mean, if you want to pick up one for depth later on, sure, fine, but I don't think it's one of those things where it's like, look, we cannot enter the season with these two as our 1 and 2
by any means. But man, like, there still is part of me, like, when I sit around and I think about this team and kind of what they can be and all that stuff, there still is part of me that kind of looks at him and is like, damn, like, if he was playing safety, like, how good of a safety could he be? Because he has really good speed, which means he has really good range. I think he has good instincts. He's great coming downhill. I'm not by any means saying, like, move him from corner or saying he would be a better safety than a corner, or that he shouldn't play corner or anything like that. I just think it's something fun to think about a little bit. Like, if I was going to change one guy's position and just to see what could be done, I think putting that guy at safety and letting him be, like, just like a demon in the box, and then, also letting him get some deep stuff, I wouldn't mind watching that. I think it would be really cool.
I think he'd be great at safety. I think that'd be a great idea. I mean, it's always difficult to do that, to move arguably your best corner to safety. But I think his play style is more suited to play safety. I mean, I think he'd be great.
Cool thing to kind of see what it would do. And that was kind of the thought process on him, even coming out of Tennessee, is that he had, like, some safety flexibility. But obviously, that isn't going to be his position. They're looking at him, obviously as a corner. I think he settled in there. I think he was playing really, really well in the slot. And it's a thing on the outside that we still need to see. And, as far as Kool-Aid, I think there's still some stuff that he needs to show a little bit too. And, they need to figure that stuff out. I think it's really important. Like, you're looking at their pick at 10, and I think ideally, like, you'd want them to be able to take a quarterback, a wide receiver, maybe a DN at that spot. I mean, obviously, best player available. The DT from Michigan could be an option.
Every mock I've seen has us taking Abdul Carter, who is the outside linebacker slash DN slash whatever from Penn State. But it is one of those situations where you take the best guy. Like, we need everything. We need literally everything. So you take the best whoever. Like, you take the best there. And I've said it before, and I'll say it probably for the next 8 months, but you got to hit on every draft pick. It is not just the first round. It is the second round. It is the third round. You have to get players who, at the minimum, are starting day one. At the preferred, are above average from day one, and you're hoping to hit all pros, because that's how it's going to work. That's how you're going to get back to some form of back to where we need to be. We have to hit the draft class where you're taking the Alvin Kamara's, the Ryan Ramczyks, the Michael Thomases. You're finding those guys, whether it's in the first round, second round, third round, whatever. You have to find your next 2016, 2017 draft class if you're Mickey Loomis.
At that position, I really do think they're in a position where BPA could make a lot of sense, because I think you could make a case for taking a quarterback. I think you could make a case for taking a wide receiver. If there was like a Brock Bowers level tight end in this draft, and I don't think there is, you could make a case for taking that guy there. Receiver, like I said. Offensive tackle, you could use one of them. Guard, absolutely could use another guard. That could be a position you could take. Both D-line spots. Linebackers.
It's every single position. Every single position you could take, besides kicker.
Going to be a need sooner than later. I think it kind of maybe I think you're still okay with these two for a little bit longer, but that's obviously going to be a need at a certain point. I don't think it's a need at 10, but if like there was like a Hall of Fame level linebacker, sure. Cornerback, hopefully you're taking that off the list. Safety, definitely a need. I think you still got some time with Tyron, obviously, but that other spot could be upgraded. Howden hasn't ran away with that by any means, so that's a position where I still think that you could look for somebody. So yeah, I think that's a position where you could take pretty much anybody, and if you could take a cornerback off that list, man, that would be a huge benefit.
Yeah, I mean, I think cornerback is like the least. Cornerback and quarterback, unless something happens where like one of the top guys slide. But I think like right now, like if you're looking at the team and running back, cornerback, quarterback are probably your least concern. Maybe center, I guess, but like everything else, I mean, you got, and even running back, like it's like, depending on how you feel about Kendra Miller, you're probably going to have to take a running back. You probably are going to have to start filling out some depth. So, if you're sitting there, I don't know. I mean, the draft, and obviously the draft's a long way away, but it's going to be an interesting, those are the most fun drafts, I think, because, and I'm not saying to draft these players, but Ashton Jeanty makes as much sense as Shedeur Sanders, who makes as much sense as whatever your top wide receiver is, who makes as much sense as Will Campbell, who makes as much sense as Abdul Carter. Like, everything is there. And then you have players like Tyler Warren from Penn State, who's projected to be like the 30th pick, 31st pick, something like that. But you need him just as much as you need Ashton Jeanty. So then you're like, well, damn, do we trade up and back into the first round to take Tyler Warren? Do we try and replace Taysom with him? Or is he like the tight end that we need? He's somewhere in between Taysom and Brock Bowers? Like, what do we do? Do we take, but we can't wait. We don't want to take him at 10. So all of a sudden now it's like, do we take a wide receiver at 10 and then turn around and take Warren at 31? Can we trade back in? Does that make sense? Or do we, there's a lot of possibilities in the draft for the Saints team.
So it's going to be fascinating to kind of see. But yeah, those guys going down the stretch, Mike wrote a story about it today, just like the players to watch going down the stretch. And I think I have them kind of right at the top of that list, and like in terms of importance. Brian Brzee too. Like if he can keep just, I don't know, somehow over the final month of the season, like really do something to show you.
I'm pretty lukewarm on Brzee. I mean, he's okay at times, but he's so bad against the run. I just don't know if he's, again, like, you don't need rotational players. He is a rotational player, I think. Like, he's a pseudo specialist. I mean, I'm not ready to say like he's a long-term starter, impact player.
That run defense component, like I would feel great about that position then. The pass rush, I think, has been really, really good with him, but that's another one to kind of keep an eye on. So, this season kind of is a little bit of a wash at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure.
I don't.
Even if we somehow caught fire and got into the playoffs, like, we're just not that good of a team. The roster is not that good to where even if we snuck in there, like, like, sweet, cool, we snuck in the playoffs, but are we good enough to make any noise? No, right? Like, the team is just mid. So, yeah, this season is a wash because of the 7-game losing streak and a couple of Rattler starts and all the injuries and whatever. Like, you never know. It could have been fun. We could have been one of those teams where, yeah, you're mid, yeah, you're average, but you're a fun average, like, whatever. And it is any given Sunday. But this year was, if anything, I would say this year really shows / proves / sets up for, like, the next window, next chapter of the New Orleans Saints. And there's something exciting about that too. I mean, depending on who the new head coach is and depending on who we take in the draft and what we're doing moving forward, I mean, over the next couple of years, we're going to see basically a full scale rebuild, not like tear it down, build it back up, rebuild, but just inherently like a natural rebuild. I mean, players who fan favorites, players who lifetime Saints, all that, either they are gone or they will be gone very soon. Like, within the next 2 years, you can count Marshawn Lattimore because he was traded this year, but like Marshawn, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Taysom Hill, Ryan Ramczyk, all those players are going to be gone, whether it's because of retirement or trade or release or whatever. So, and then that's not even counting the coaches, right? Like, it's not even counting last year Pete Carmichael, this year Dennis Allen. Could be Kubiak, could be Rizzi. Those guys could be gone. Or they could stay. Like, it's just a lot happening right now for the Saints.
I don't really know what you're watching for down the stretch. I mean, I know playoffs are still alive and all that stuff, but I think, let me rephrase that. Like, as far as like competitively, playoff wise, and all that stuff, I don't really know what you're watching for down the stretch. Like, yeah, I mean, you could go get a win this week and you're still alive. Like, you could steal one next week. Maybe then you're kind of talking yourself back into like the what if or whatever. But I think realistically speaking, that ship is sailed.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a 1% chance. And at a certain point, like, you always want your team to win and you always want, the playoffs or whatever, but you have to be realistic too. Like, look, I mean, it's a 1% chance. It is what it is. And yeah, I'm fine with it. Like, I'm no damn fool. I'm not going to sit here and say Saints are going to win out. Saints are going to make the playoffs. We're going to, catch fire and we can do this and we can do that. And we can, whatever. Like I said, I think we're pretty mid. I think we're relatively devoid of talent compared to some of the other teams, like the higher level teams. Mathematically, we're not eliminated from the playoffs, but I don't expect us to make the playoffs. Of course, I'm rooting for this team to win. I mean, of course, I'm rooting for good performances, fun performances. I like when we win, whatever. But yeah, so I understand what he's saying. Where, like, what exactly are you rooting for? I think at the end of the day, you just root for your team to win, and you root for players who you like to do well, and you evaluate and you try and decide what do we need to do in the draft, and you try and decide, like, okay, well, when you're watching, like, I was watching, like I said, the Tulane game, and I had a lot of people tweeting at me saying, like, this Army quarterback is the next Taysom Hill. Like, maybe you take him late. Like, maybe you take him late in the draft and say, Let's see what we can do. There's no doubt in my mind he'll go play special teams. That guy's an animal. He truly is Captain America. So right now it's a Sudoku puzzle, and sometimes the funnest part of doing a Sudoku puzzle or a crossword puzzle is actually doing it, not finishing it. And I think that's where we're at right now with the Saints. The fun part right now is putting the puzzle together. We are nowhere near the finished puzzle. We're nowhere near teams that are actually competing. You go look at the Eagles or the Lions or even like the Packers, teams like that in the NFC, and we're not. I mean, we're not even close to those teams. But the Lions weren't close to who they are right now 2 years ago. They weren't. The Lions were horrific 3 years ago. So part of it's putting that together, and we're at the beginning stages of putting together the pieces. So right now it's just looking around and deciding who are those pieces and what we need to move around.
I don't know how really, like, you're going to win enough games with the talent that's available. There's just way too many hurt players at this point, I really think, to mount like a realistic attack down the stretch. And letting no one get away last week, I think just kind of changes the outlook of the whole entire season. So that's tough to me to kind of see it that way. But yeah, I mean, I think there's stuff to still watch for. There's still stuff that I'm definitely watching for. And a lot of it is kind of, future-based at this point. So those are a couple of the things, though. I think definitely what happens at
where are we
cornerback is a huge one. I don't think you're really finding answers.
Are we
at defensive end?
Are we even still in America?
Maybe Chase Young turns it on and changes the narrative a little bit. I think that Brzee component, seeing how he develops, I think is still
I feel like I'm on a motion
huge
ride
thing, and that's something to watch for down the stretch. Your receivers are out. I do think that there's kind of like an interesting little subplot here with Juwan Johnson too. He's in a contract year, and just being totally honest, I don't think that he's earned like a repeat at the salary he's at.
Hell no.
And I think, if you want to go out and you want to get paid, like there was an opportunity last week on that deep ball. I know there was PI that probably should have been called, but you need to finish that play. Like that ball hit him in the hands, you can still catch it.
But same thing with Juwan and Foster. Like Juwan and Foster, I think, are just kind of average to below average tight ends. And that's it. Like you look at some of the other tight ends, and they're nowhere near those players. They're nowhere near the other tight ends in the NFL. So, or the other top tight ends in the NFL. So it's just one of those things where we're in like a discovery phase. We're just in a discovery phase with every player where you kind of can play free. Like if you're the Saints, there's no reason not to put it all out there. So you can look at these players and say, like, okay, well, I'm comparing you against the rest of the NFL. You better show me, and even the coaches, like everyone is on, I don't want to say the chopping block, but everyone should be being evaluated. And every single performance should be stacked up against every other high-level player in the NFL. And that's the only way we're going to figure out who is part of the future and who isn't.
But I think there's low-key like a decent opportunity for him to step up over these next few weeks with all the injuries at wide receiver.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And just to show, show that you can go out and you can do this, and you can carry the weight a little bit. And I think that's how you earn that next contract at a decent salary. He could still be, brought back, but I think there's dollars on the table for him, and I think the opportunity is there for him to really kind of do something. So that would be another place where I think you could see a little bit of a step up and maybe see somebody chase something, and that would be kind of interesting to watch too. But I'm not necessarily betting on that at this point. I think like when the plays are there, like he's made them, but I don't know that he's went out and said, hey, damn it, get the ball to me. And it was close on that last play of the game too. He was getting open at the end of that route. It just took a little bit too long for that to happen. So, that's another one too. That's another spot where you could see something happen. Man, this damn light at Claiborne is always out.
In New Orleans, if it rains, I've joked and said they must have the plugs for the lights like all on the same outlet outside, because if it rains, every single light in New Orleans is flashing red. Everyone is out. If it rains at all, they are out. It's ridiculous. It is like clockwork. I mean, I've never seen infrastructure like that so bad that But it is every single time. I mean, I go through three or four. I go through 4 stoplights every day, and every day, if it drizzles, if it sprinkles, if it thunderstorms, every single one of them is flashing. Everyone.
Anytime it rains, it's crazy.
It's
But yeah, I mean that's a spot where I think you could see something happen down the stretch. So it would be kind of interesting to see that, see how he plays down the stretch. I don't really have anyone else like that I necessarily got circled like that. Like as far as key pieces to the future that can show something. Like I think we kind of know what Pete Werner is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a narrative change there. I think that kind of shifting of the guard at linebacker is already kind of underway, and I think that kind of played itself out during the offseason when he got that contract extension. But I don't know if there's really any other subplots with the young guys, and that's kind of where we're at with this. Other than that, it's kind of future looking a little bit. I already started playing with the mock draft machines a little bit, kind of starting to see where that one can fall into place. Kind of looking, starting to look a little bit at some of the coaching candidates and who could be out there reaching out to see what people think about this job and all that. I mean, people generally, I think the patience of the organization, as frustrating as it can be to me, to you, to all of us, I think that patience of the organization to kind of give something a fair chance to play out. Like I actually think, in some of the feedback I'm getting, I actually think people see that as a positive in that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to, like, the other side of that is like the Carolina Panthers, where, Tepper, there's so much movement. He's so quick to fire a coach or move off of a player or trade a player or whatever. Like, I think that kind of stuff, those are the kind of volatile situations like you don't want to be in. You don't want to be in that situation. You want to be in a situation where you're given time. You're not. It's not like win your first 6 games, we're firing you. That's not what you want.
If you come to this situation, there's a pretty good chance that you'll get a fair shake at turning it around, because I think people kind of look at it like it's probably a couple years to rebuild it if things go right. If you wanted to preserve it, I think that there's like a core of players that you could probably patch in some guys and potentially make that playoff run next year. Is it worth it to do it? I think if you're doing it the right way, as people have told me that, they would probably start over. But it is going to be interesting to see how those philosophies align with the people in the front office with who they're bringing in too. Obviously I think everybody would need to be on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like that's a big part of it too. It's not just the roster. It's like, okay, the front office has to be on the same page as the incoming coach. Like Nick's talking about, like, who on the roster do you build around? Who do you replace? Who do you start doing whatever? Well, that's a domino effect with these contracts, where it's like, okay, if an incoming coach wants to move off of a player, but that player's contract is tied to a 3-year plan, like that is not exactly fitting. So you got to have a coach or whoever that's coming in that understands, and everyone is on the same page, for sure.
To some degree, I don't think that a full-on teardown is really possible because of the way the cap's set up. So
not next year, maybe the next 2 years.
There will kind of be an element of, the quote-unquote competitive rebuild. I personally don't believe in the full-out teardown, but I think there's a partial teardown here that could and should probably maybe take place at some, over the.
Yeah, I think like within the next 2 years, you will see a partial teardown. That's kind of what I'm talking about with that, like, natural expiration of some of these contracts. Like, I think that partial rebuild over the next 2 years will be the Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, Tyrann Mathieu, Marshawn Lattimore, we already saw, Ryan Ramczyk, Derek Carr. Like, that's a lot of players. That's a lot of players that are either going to naturally expire, or you're going to find a way out of the contract, or you're going to restructure, whatever. Taysom Hill as well. Like, it is what it is. But in the next 2 years, those players will be gone. Those players will either move on their own accord, a la Ryan Ramczyk, a la Cam Jordan, or it'll just be how the cookie crumbles, a la Taysom Hill. So that is kind of the soft organic rebuild that we're about to see. We are staring that in the face, whether you like it or not.
For the next couple of years, as you can do it, but yeah, I mean, I think those are the things that we're going to be kind of shifting to here pretty quickly. It kind of covering this thing and talking about it as the string plays out. Like, I don't know, like it just doesn't make a lot of sense to kind of at a certain point to continue to look at this like what does it mean? What does this win mean? What does this loss mean? And the sooner we can kind of get on the other side of that, I don't know if it's fully there yet, but the sooner we can kind of get on the other side of that and just start looking at this like the off season and what it can be, I think the better. Because I mean, really
that part is more of a content creator side of things. And part of that is like, when you're mired in the kind of, I'm not even going to say the middle ground, but when you're mired in where the Saints are now, which is like 1% to the playoffs, like, does each game matter? Like breaking down, the Giants game or breaking down the Raiders game or breaking down all those games. Like at a certain point, you have to kind of let the rope go of, okay, well, let's go ahead and compare the X's and O's for the Giants, who are absolutely terrible, who have quit on their team, who have released their quarterback, who have injuries and who aren't playing for anything. Let's compare those X's and O's with the Saints X's and O's, who also fired their coach, who also have nothing to play for, really, who also have injuries. Like, as you get towards those last couple of weeks of the season, it does kind of get to that. So I understand what he's saying, where it's like, man, covering Giants versus Saints, covering, Tyrone Tracy versus Brian Brzee. It's like, what? That's I 100% understand what he's saying, where it's like, okay, let's move on to the future. Let's move on to the what ifs. Let's move on to the offseason. Let's move on to draft talk. Let's move on to coaching candidates. Let's move on to those interviews. I get that.
That's where it's at. Like, you're just kind of playing out the string at this point and seeing where the chips fall. So watching that draft pick, some of the teams that shouldn't be winning games are winning some games. So I think that kind of helps with the status. Didn't really move this week as far as the loss, but not adding wins, I think helps that status in the long run. So I mean, that's really the big thing here. Obviously they'll never tank, they'll never do anything like that, but just kind of seeing how that comes together, I think is going to be probably one of the more interesting aspects of this season. So the final stretch of the season. So I don't know. Decided to fire up the cam and just kind of talk as we're riding home. Kind of want to do a little more content like this. So gonna play around with it, do some different things, see kind of how stuff changes and what works, what doesn't. If we do this again, I'm sure how this is being done right now is probably the worst that it'll ever be, but we're going to figure out how to do some different things content-wise. I want to play around with it over this next month and just kind of figure out, like, what's cool, what isn't. So as you see us doing some different things, kind of just let me know. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, kind of what you'd like to see, what you wouldn't like to see. Because I think just kind of doing stuff the normal way.
This right here, absolute danger scenario. We're in a turn situation, oncoming traffic. No one. This right here is make it or break it time. T-bone possibility always to the roof. Who's blowing through red lights? Who's ignoring stop signs? Who's texting? So doing this while commentating, this is absolutely high volatility. I'm rooting for Nicholas here. Fingers crossed. Let's see if he executes.
Way that everybody does it. Like, we've kind of done that, and I don't want to just, have talking head videos and all that stuff. Like, I kind of want it to be a little bit different, a little bit more personal. So we're going to figure out what hits, what doesn't, and kind of.
Unbelievable. Wow. I say unbelievable. I hope he's not mid-barrel roll. From what I saw, executed the U-turn perfectly from what I saw. So hopefully that worked out. But good stuff there from Nick. Feedback from the face of the franchise. But I thought it was great. I think great idea to get away from the normal format. It's always nice to see different stuff. Break the format. Good. I think people are going to enjoy this. If I had to guess, and I am a bit of an expert when it comes to this, but if I had to guess, I would say this will be a rousing success. It is good to mix and match content, which is why we have a ton. I mean, obviously we have like 6 different channels. So we try and mix and match content down here too. But, we also mix and match like different sports stuff. Like we talk Pelicans, or we'll talk just NFL in general, where, I know Nick and the group are a little more siloed into the Saints. So it's probably so nice for him. Such a relief to be able to talk about or do something else. It's not just in the studio. So I think more of this. Fun fact about me. At one point, I thought about doing a podcast, and I was going to call the podcast The Commute, and I was going to record myself while driving my commute, because back in 2018, I had an hour commute every day. I drove 1 hour every single day to and from work, and I was like, well, I'm driving anyways. Like, an hour is pretty chill. So what if I just every single day recorded like me driving, and I just would talk. I would just kind of talk about general topics, and the podcast would be called The Commute. And I thought about doing that. I ended up not doing it because I am like the most obsessive, like focused driver in the world. I hate driving, and I don't even really play the radio very much in my car. I'm so like laser focused on the road. Anyone that has ridden with me will know that I'm, I drive slow, and I'm, whatever. Yellow light, I'm stopping, but so I could never do this because it would just drive me up the road to be able to not focus on the road and whatever. So scrap the idea. But if anyone wants to use that idea, feel free. The Commute would be a great podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Nick, good stuff as always. Get on over to NewOrleans.football. Show them some love. They're, 10 out of 10 on the content. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you in the next